So this is how my marriage ends.
Finding that positive pregnancy test buried in our bathroom wastebasket felt like discovering a ticking explosive device. Two vivid pink lines glared back at me through the white plastic window, mocking everything I thought I knew about my marriage. My wife Jessica had been systematically avoiding any physical contact with me for nearly 6 months straight. Every advance I made was met with elaborate excuses. Splitting headaches that conveniently appeared whenever I got close, sudden urgent work projects that demanded her immediate attention, mysterious ailments that required absolute rest and solitude. Yet here was irrefutable evidence that she'd been anything but celibate during our supposed dry spell. The test wasn't carelessly discarded either. It was deliberately hidden beneath layers of crumpled tissues and an empty conditioner bottle, like she'd taken special care to conceal her secret from prying eyes. Jessica never did anything without careful calculation. Every decision she made was part of some elaborate strategy, always thinking 3 moves ahead like she was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. If this pregnancy test had ended up where I could find it, either she wanted me to discover it as part of some twisted plan, or she'd grown so arrogantly confident in her deception that she'd finally made a careless mistake. Standing there in our master bathroom, holding physical proof of her betrayal, I felt my entire world tilt sideways. The fury building in my chest was so intense it made breathing difficult, but I forced myself to think strategically rather than react emotionally. Charging downstairs to confront her immediately would be exactly what she'd expect from someone like me. Predictable, emotional, easily manipulated. Instead, I carefully returned the test to its hiding spot, meticulously rearranging the trash to look completely undisturbed. Then I walked out of that bathroom, wearing the same expression I'd worn going in, even though my marriage had just exploded into a million pieces. My hands wouldn't stop trembling as I sat at our kitchen table, pretending to scroll through news articles on my phone while listening for her movements upstairs. When Jessica finally descended 20 minutes later, her hair still damp from the shower and wearing that expensive silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas, she didn't even acknowledge my presence. She simply poured herself a cup of coffee from the machine and began mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, like she was living in some alternate reality where consequences didn't exist. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. Here was a woman who'd been systematically lying to my face for months, carrying another man's child while playing the role of devoted wife, and she had the nerve to act like everything was perfectly normal. I wanted to grab that coffee mug and smash it against the wall, wanted to scream until my voice gave out, wanted to demand answers to questions that would shatter both our lives. But I didn't. Not yet. "You look well-rested," I said with practiced calmness, forcing my voice to remain steady and conversational. "Big day at the office today?" Jessica glanced up briefly, her expression completely unreadable behind those perfectly applied layers of makeup she never seemed to leave home without anymore. "Same routine as always. Meetings, deadlines, putting out fires, you know how it goes." The casual indifference in her voice made my stomach lurch violently. She wasn't just lying to me. She was enjoying it. There was something almost sadistic about how effortlessly the deception rolled off her tongue, like she'd been practicing these performances for months and had finally perfected her delivery. But if Jessica thought she was married to some naive fool who'd never question her increasingly suspicious behavior, she was about to receive the shock of her lifetime. I was going to methodically uncover every single lie, document every piece of evidence. And when I finally made my move, she'd realized too late that she'd severely underestimated the man she'd chosen to betray. That night, sleep was impossible. My brain was operating in overdrive, analyzing every interaction we'd had over the past 6 months, looking for clues I'd previously missed or dismissed. Jessica was obviously playing some elaborate game with rules I didn't understand yet, but I was determined to figure out her strategy before she could claim victory. I lay there listening to her peaceful breathing, watching her sleep so soundly beside me, completely oblivious to the hurricane she'd unleashed. By dawn, I had the foundation of a plan that would systematically expose every lie she'd told and every secret she was hiding. The next morning at breakfast, Jessica maintained her Oscar-worthy performance of the loving wife. She even kissed my cheek before gathering her things for work, which now felt like a calculated insult designed to keep me from suspecting anything. I played my part too, smiling at her jokes and making small talk about weekend plans, all while carefully observing her behavior for any tells or inconsistencies. The most obvious change was how she guarded her phone like it contained state secrets. Previously, she'd leave it casually scattered around the house, on kitchen counters, coffee tables, bathroom sinks. Now it was permanently attached to her hand, accompanying her even during her increasingly frequent and lengthy bathroom visits that sometimes stretched for 20 or 30 minutes at a time. "Everything all right?" I asked with feigned concern when she emerged from her fourth bathroom trip that morning. "You've been spending a lot of time in there lately." Jessica hesitated for just a fraction of a second, barely long enough for most people to notice, but I was watching her like a hawk now. Then she recovered with a laugh that sounded just a little too rehearsed. "Yeah, just some digestive issues. Probably that seafood place we tried last weekend." Another lie. We hadn't eaten seafood in over a month. I nodded sympathetically and made appropriate concerned husband noises, but internally, I was adding this fabrication to my growing mental list of her deceptions. If she was lying about something this trivial, what other lies was she telling? Later that afternoon, while Jessica was supposedly at work handling her endless stream of urgent projects, I decided to conduct a more thorough investigation of our home. I'd never been the type to snoop through my spouse's belongings, but these weren't normal circumstances anymore. This wasn't paranoid jealousy. This was self-preservation. I started by carefully examining every piece of trash and every wastebasket throughout the house. Hidden at the bottom of the bin in her home office, I discovered a crumpled receipt from an upscale boutique in the neighboring city. The purchase date was 3 days ago, and the itemized list included luxury scented candles, expensive silk lingerie in a size she'd never worn for me, and a bottle of men's cologne that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. My heart pounded as I studied the receipt, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. She certainly hadn't bought these items for me. I would have remembered receiving such expensive gifts. But if not for me, then for whom? And why was she making secret shopping trips to stores 40 miles away from our home? I felt like I was living in some psychological thriller, piecing together clues in real time while trying not to jump to the obvious conclusions my mind was reaching. The pregnancy test, these mysterious luxury purchases, the constant late nights at work. Everything was forming a picture I didn't want to accept but could no longer ignore. That evening, I decided to test her again. We were sitting on our living room sofa, half-heartedly watching some reality television show neither of us actually cared about when I casually asked, "So who's the cologne for?" Jessica's head snapped toward me so quickly I thought she might give herself whiplash. For a brief moment, her carefully maintained mask slipped completely, revealing pure panic underneath. Her eyes widened, and her mouth opened like she was about to confess everything. But then her training kicked in and she recovered beautifully, laughing like I'd just told the world's most amusing joke. "Oh, that! It's for my department head's birthday celebration. The whole team pooled our money together for a group gift. I volunteered to handle the shopping since I'm good at picking out that kind of stuff." It was a masterful lie, quick, plausible, and detailed enough to discourage follow-up questions without being so elaborate that it sounded rehearsed. Under normal circumstances, I probably would have accepted her explanation without a second thought. But these weren't normal circumstances anymore. "That's really thoughtful of you to take charge like that," I said, smiling like I believed every word. "I'm sure he'll appreciate the effort you put into choosing something so personal." Jessica visibly relaxed, sinking back into the cushions with what appeared to be genuine relief. She had absolutely no idea that I was already several steps ahead of her game, that I was building an ironclad case against her one lie at a time. This wasn't just about catching her in the act anymore. This was about ensuring that when the truth finally came to light, she wouldn't be able to manipulate, gaslight, or lie her way out of the consequences she'd brought upon herself. The next phase of my investigation required taking a risk I never thought I'd have to take in my own marriage. The following morning, after Jessica left for her supposed day at the office, I got in my car and followed her. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. Tailing your own spouse feels like crossing a line you can never uncross. But her pattern of lies had become so extensive that I needed visual confirmation of where she was actually going. I maintained a careful distance, staying far enough back that she wouldn't spot me in her rearview mirror, but close enough to track her movements. At first, everything appeared normal. She drove her usual route toward downtown, coffee cup in hand, looking every inch the consummate professional heading to another day of important meetings and pressing deadlines. Then she took an unexpected turn that led her away from the business district entirely, heading toward a charming little neighborhood cafe on the outskirts of town that I'd never seen her visit before. My pulse quickened as I found a parking spot half a block away, positioning myself where I could observe her without being detected. Jessica stepped out of her car wearing an outfit that was far too sophisticated for a typical workday. The dress was one I'd never seen before. Form-fitting, expensive-looking, paired with heels that clicked authoritatively against the pavement. This wasn't the attire of someone heading to boring office meetings. This was the carefully chosen ensemble of a woman preparing for something much more personal. She walked into the cafe with the confidence of someone who'd been there many times before, and within minutes, a man appeared to join her. He was tall and athletically built, dressed in the kind of business casual attire that screamed success and sophistication. They found a secluded corner table where they could speak privately, leaning toward each other with the easy intimacy of people who'd shared many such conversations. Watching them together was like receiving a physical blow to the chest. Jessica's face was absolutely radiant in a way I hadn't witnessed in months. She laughed at his jokes with genuine delight, touched his arm during conversation, and gazed at him with the kind of adoration she used to reserve for me in the early days of our relationship. The chemistry between them was unmistakable and devastating. I sat in my car with white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, part of me wanting to storm into that cafe and flip their cozy little table over, demanding answers and making a scene that would expose their affair to everyone present. But I forced myself to remain disciplined. Losing control now would only give Jessica ammunition to use against me later. Instead, I pulled out my phone and began documenting everything. Photos of them together, timestamps, notes about their body language and interactions. If I was going to destroy their fantasy world, I needed irrefutable evidence that even Jessica's silver tongue couldn't explain away. They spent over an hour in that cafe, sharing pastries and intimate conversation like they didn't have a care in the world. When they finally prepared to leave, I watched the man reach out to brush a strand of hair from Jessica's face before leaning in to kiss her cheek tenderly. She didn't pull away or seem surprised by the gesture. Instead, she lingered in the moment, smiling up at him like he was the center of her universe. The betrayal hit me like a tsunami of rage and heartbreak, but I channeled that energy into cold determination. Instead of letting the anger consume me, I stayed focused on my mission. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I followed them back to their cars, maintaining my distance while documenting their goodbye. The tenderness between them, the reluctance to part, the promise in their eyes that this wouldn't be their last meeting. It was all there for my camera to capture. Driving home in stunned silence, my mind raced with questions that demanded answers. Who was this man? How long had their affair been going on? Did he know she was married? And how much longer did Jessica think she could maintain this elaborate double life? I didn't have all the pieces yet, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Jessica had made a critical error by underestimating me. When the time came for her reckoning, I would ensure she regretted every lie she'd told and every moment she'd spent betraying our marriage vows. That evening, Jessica returned home carrying bags of takeout food, playing the role of the thoughtful wife who wanted to surprise her hard-working husband with his favorite meal. The performance was almost insulting in its transparency. She unpacked containers of barbecue and sides with theatrical enthusiasm, kissing my cheek and chattering about how hard I'd been working lately and how much I deserved to be pampered. The woman who'd spent her afternoon gazing lovingly at another man was now standing in our kitchen, acting like she'd won some kind of Wife of the Year award. "I picked up all your favorites from that place you love," she announced proudly, as if choosing a restaurant somehow compensated for months of deception. Figured we could have a nice, relaxing dinner together and catch up properly. I forced myself to smile and express appropriate gratitude while internally marveling at her audacity. The ease with which she switched between her roles was genuinely impressive in its own sick way. Over dinner, I watched her overcompensate with animated conversation about her supposedly boring workday, asking detailed questions about my projects and laughing at jokes that weren't particularly funny. She was working overtime to appear normal, which only confirmed how abnormal everything had become. "Work's been keeping you pretty busy lately," I observed casually, testing the waters. "All those long days and extra meetings, it must be exhausting." She barely glanced up from her plate. "You know how it is in my industry. When clients demand results, we have to deliver regardless of the hours involved. Must be tough juggling everything. Early morning meetings, late night projects, weekend networking events. You're really dedicated. That got her attention. She looked up sharply, her smile becoming slightly strained. It's not that bad. Besides, I'm building our future, right? Everything I do is for us. Absolutely, I agreed with fake enthusiasm. Like that networking breakfast you had this morning. How did that go? Jessica froze like someone had pressed a pause button. For just a moment, her mask slipped completely, revealing the panic underneath. Her grip tightened on her fork, and she quickly tried to cover her reaction with another laugh. Oh, that? It was just some industry thing. Nothing too exciting, mostly boring shop talk and stale pastries. I leaned back in my chair, maintaining my casual tone. Funny, you didn't mention it this morning. Networking usually sounds more interesting than that. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied my face, clearly trying to determine whether I was genuinely curious or fishing for information. Ethan, why the interrogation? It was just work stuff. Why are you making it sound suspicious? I raised my hands in mock surrender, projecting innocent confusion. Not at all, just interested in your day. That's all. You seem a little defensive about a simple question. She watched me carefully for several more seconds before apparently deciding I wasn't a threat. With a dismissive shrug, she returned her attention to her food, muttering something under her breath about me being paranoid lately. But I wasn't paranoid. I was methodical, and every lie she told was another nail in the coffin I was building for her deceptions. That night after Jessica went to bed, I stayed up reviewing the photographs I'd captured at the cafe. Each image was a dagger through my heart, but also a crucial piece of evidence in the case I was building. Her radiant smiles, the intimate way she leaned toward him, the tender kiss goodbye. It was all documented now in vivid, undeniable detail. She had no idea I was systematically dismantling her web of lies, preparing for the moment when I'd expose everything she'd done. Jessica thought she was untouchable, that she was too smart to get caught, that I was too trusting to question her increasingly elaborate stories. That overconfidence would be her downfall. The next day, I decided to escalate my investigation. Watching and waiting had served its purpose, but now I needed concrete answers. I wasn't going to sit passively while Jessica continued controlling the narrative of our marriage. While she was at work, I installed monitoring software on her laptop. Jessica wasn't particularly tech-savvy, and her password habits were embarrassingly predictable. Within minutes, I had access to her email accounts and calendar applications. I wasn't proud of resorting to such tactics, but pride was a luxury I could no longer afford. Her email inbox was a treasure trove of damning evidence. Buried among legitimate work correspondence were dozens of messages from someone named Ryan Thompson. The emails weren't explicitly sexual, but their tone was unmistakably romantic. Playful banter, inside jokes, frequent arrangements to meet for coffee or lunch, and the kind of casual intimacy that only exists between lovers. Ryan was obviously the man from the cafe, and he was definitely much more than a casual acquaintance. But it was her calendar that delivered the most devastating blow. Among her legitimate appointments and work meetings, I found an entry that made my blood run cold. Friday, 3 p.m. Dr. Rodriguez prenatal consultation. She wasn't just pregnant. She was actively managing her pregnancy behind my back, attending medical appointments with her lover while lying to my face every single day. The betrayal was so complete, so thoroughly planned that it took my breath away. This was my smoking gun, the one piece of evidence she couldn't possibly explain away or manipulate. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet, not until I could bring her entire house of cards crashing down in one spectacular revelation. I spent the next hour researching Ryan Thompson. His email signature provided his company information, and a quick LinkedIn search revealed he was a senior consultant at a prestigious downtown firm. More importantly, his profile showed he was married with 2 young children, a detail that filled me with cold satisfaction. This meant Jessica's affair wasn't just destroying our marriage, it was potentially destroying an innocent family. If Ryan thought he could waltz into my life, seduce my wife, and walk away without consequences, he was about to learn just how wrong he could be. Friday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Jessica went through her usual routine, showering and dressing for work while chatting about weekend plans we both knew she had no intention of keeping. She kissed me goodbye with what seemed like genuine affection, still completely unaware that I knew about her afternoon appointment. By 2:30, I sat in my car across from the clinic on her calendar. The building was modern but plain, squeezed between a pharmacy and a pediatric dentist. I wasn't sure what I'd see, but my gut told me this would be the final proof I needed. The parking lot stayed busy, pregnant women arriving with partners, relatives, or alone. At exactly 2:55, Jessica's silver sedan pulled in. She stepped out carefully, looking uneasy, her eyes scanning the area like she expected someone to be watching. Minutes later, Ryan came from the opposite side, coffee cup in hand, moving like a man who had every right to be there. The instant Jessica saw him, her whole mood changed. The nerves melted away and her face lit up with a joy I hadn't seen from her in years. They hugged in the lot, not quick or casual, but long and close, the kind of embrace that only comes from people who are deeply connected. Watching them was like watching my marriage end in real time. I followed them inside, staying back far enough not to be noticed, but close enough to capture it all. They walked hand in hand to the elevator, moving with the ease of a couple who had done this before. I waited in a restroom near the suite, phone ready. Half an hour later, they came out together, both smiling, wrapped in their own little world. Ryan's arm was across her shoulders, protective and sure, while Jessica clutched ultrasound images to her chest like they were priceless. They were so lost in their joy they didn't even see me recording. The video I captured was clear and devastating. Jessica's glowing face as she spoke with him. Ryan's pride, the quiet closeness between them. It was all right there, undeniable. By the time I returned home, I had everything I needed to destroy the fantasy world they'd built on the foundation of lies and betrayal. Jessica thought she was untouchable, that she could manipulate and deceive without ever facing consequences. She was about to learn just how wrong she'd been about that. The weekend went by under a mask of false calm. Jessica played the part of a loving wife so well it almost seemed real. She even suggested we go out Saturday night, picking a pricey Italian place downtown with candlelit tables and wine that cost too much. She wore a red dress I'd never seen before, walking into the role like she was auditioning for an award. I matched her act, sitting across as the devoted husband while inside I was getting ready for the truth that would tear everything apart. The spot she picked was perfect. Public enough that she wouldn't explode, quiet enough for what I had to say. Halfway through dinner, as she spun pasta and rambled about useless work gossip, I decided it was time to set off the bomb I'd been waiting to drop. "I've been thinking a lot about where this marriage is going," I said, swirling the wine in my glass and watching her face. She froze mid-bite, sensing the shift. "Oh? What's this about?" I leaned back, keeping calm. "You've been distracted, like something's weighing on you. I think we need to talk about it." She blinked fast, clearly thrown off. "Distracted? No, it's just work stress. You know how demanding my job is." "Work," I echoed, my voice dry. "All those late nights, the breakfasts, the trips, that's all just business, right?" Her fork shook in her hand, her knuckles going pale. "Ethan, I don't like what you're suggesting. Are you saying you don't trust me?" I smiled thinly and slid my phone from my pocket. "I trust you completely, Jessica. I trust you to hide things, to cover your steps, to think no one sees through the act." I set the phone on the table. The screen lit up with a video thumbnail from a clinic. Her face strained of color. "But here's the truth," I whispered. "You're not as clever as you think." She stared at the screen, panic creeping in. "What is that?" she hissed, eyes darting around the room. "You know what it is," I said flatly. "Security footage. You and Ryan at the medical center, talking about your pregnancy like some happy couple. Sweet, really." Her lips parted, but no words came. For once, Jessica had nothing to say. "Here's your choice," I said, leaning closer. "Tell me the truth right now. Or I send this to Ryan's wife along with everything else I've found. What's it going to be?" Her fear twisted into rage, her polished mask cracking. "You fool!" she spat. "You followed me! You stalked me!" "I checked on my cheating wife," I corrected. "There's a difference. Now answer." She sat back, eyes sharp, mind racing. Then she spat the words like venom. "Fine. Yes, I'm seeing Ryan, but it's not the cheap fling you think. He gets me. He makes me feel alive. You've been cold and absent for months while I've been drowning in loneliness." Even with proof staring her in the face, she tried to flip it on me. "So, you cheat and plan to raise another man's child under my roof because I wasn't emotional enough?" I asked, stunned. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she snapped. "But yes, the baby is Ryan's. And maybe if you'd been a better husband, none of this would have happened." I pulled up another clip, her leaving the clinic with Ryan's arm around her, smiling as they talked about baby names. "Necessary," I repeated coldly. Here's what's necessary now. You pack your things tonight, go live with Ryan. But you're out of my house. Her eyes burned. You can't just throw me out? This is my home too. Watch me, I said, standing. You got until midnight. After that, I changed the locks and Christine gets the email. I walked out, leaving her among the candles and the ruin of her lies. By morning, she was gone, and my new life had finally begun.